I have with me today founding member, former guitarist, and manager of Twisted Sister, JJ French. JJ French just released his bizoir, and we're going to talk about that phrase. Twisted Business Lessons from My Life in Rock and Roll. And you can see that cover back there. And it is, man, I'll tell you, JJ, this is an incredible book in all counts. Being a writer, I was impressed with that. First of all, is I don't think there's one typo in it. The grammar is perfect. It just flows. I didn't have to reread a sentence to figure out what you were saying. That's a normal thing that I do when I'm reading these things. It's just beautifully written. Tell me the process of how you write this book. Did you buy a new ribbon for your typewriter and peck away? Write it down an old school pen and have it transcribed. What's the process exactly?
Well, first of all, it's so interesting because the band retired in 2016. So people do say former, but in fact, Twisted Sister is a living entity and will continue to be current for the rest of my life because it's an ongoing business. So whether the band performs or doesn't perform is almost irrelevant. The business of Twisted Sister continues on. And I'm kind of proud of the fact that the class of 73, which involved AC/DC, Judas Priest, Kiss, and Twisted Sister, was a great class to come out of.
Mm-hmm.
You think about bands and people who don't last very long, and here we are nearly 50 years later. It kind of makes it funny when you watch those shows like American Idol or The Voice, and the winners, some teenage kid, and they accept the award and they go, "I want to thank my fans for being with me for 15 weeks," and you want to fall off you really want to just fall off your chair. Really, you don't have no freaking clue. You have no idea. You ask Priest or AC/DC or Kiss what the road has been like in that 50 years, how rocky that road was. And the stories would all be harrowing. And we've all lost members or watched drugs and alcohol destroy membership. We've seen it a million times in all these bands. So yeah. The process of the book is that my writer, Steve Farber, my co-writer, was my mentor in the speaking world. And he's also a best-selling author and a great writer. And although I'm a professional writer, I didn't want to write this book on my own because I didn't want it to be so self-indulgent and also not know when to shut up. A lot of times if I'm writing the book, it'll be a 19 volumes history of the band. And I needed a guy to come in and go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, move on to the next story. Let's just get on with it. That's the truth. I mean, I wanted it to be a good read so that people learned from it. I didn't want to be narcissistic. I didn't want it to be self-absorbed. I really wanted to go warts and all. Like, what? Here's the life, good or bad. If you really want to know how we did it, this is how we did it. I can't speak for Motley Crue. I can't speak for Kiss. I can't speak for anybody else. I could say, this is how Twisted did it. This is how I did it. This is how Dean and me and Mark and Eddie did it. Could be nobody else's story, and it won't be. It's my story, our story. But I wanted a perspective that wasn't just so myopically mine that it helped generalize it. So you have said very nice things about the book. Were you surprised at the angle the book took?
Yeah, I was actually. I was surprised. I mean, this sounds terrible. I was surprised by the humility. It's very humble on your part, which, I didn't expect you to be egotistical by any stretch. But there is a humility. There is you say that, you're not the greatest guitar player. And that I read that and I was like, wow, it's enlightening to hear. And it's very real. You're very in touch with yourself as well as, the business end of what you're doing. And there's a real honesty to it. And that did surprise. It's brutally honest, actually. And I love that. I absolutely love that about the book.
Well, we made a lot of mistakes along the way and we survived, and that's life, isn't it? I mean, that is life. I mean, this whole, the Disney myth of happily ever after is such a myth, and it's bullshit. Like, it just never learning never ends. Mm-hmm. And in the band, this is going to sound like a really weird statement to make because it sounds like I'm self-congratulatory, but when I say what I'm about to say, it's really true. The gold and platinum albums that I have, the 37 or so that I've got that are just, you can never take that away, like an Olympic medal, you can never take it away. So they were all up in my living room for a while. They're right now in my office, so that when you walk into my house, you wouldn't know that the guitar player lives in the house, which is fine. Right. But in my office, but I had them all in my living room once. And I'm staring at them one day and I'm going, man, if you had shown me this picture when I was 25, I would have thought that I was the greatest, smartest, richest guy in the world. And yet the price I paid for all of it was so high that I said, I could never have imagined the road that would have taken to get me there. And then I said to myself, would I have taken that road had I known what it would have been like? And, we don't know those things. We don't know.
Right.
But my God, it was nothing like I expected. When I saw the Beatles on TV when I was 11 years old and went, wow, that looks like a great gig. Like that's what I want. Like, oh my God. My mother wanted me going to go into politics. I explained that in the book. My father wanted me to be a jewelry salesman. Both of those issues were not going to happen. And so when the Beatles happened, like it happened to millions of people my age at that time, It was like, my God. Now, had at that very moment, at 9:00 in the evening on February 9th, 1964, when I proclaimed to my mother that looks like a good thing, like that, I want to do that. Had somebody at that very moment put their hand on my shoulder and said, well, what do you think that means exactly? And I would say, here I am 10 years old, right? And so I think maybe I would have said a gold record because that's what we knew that was, maybe a gold, whatever the hell that meant, I went, I don't know, like a gold record. And the person would have said to me, okay, John, you'll have that gold record. And I'll go, oh, really? Like when? Like in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years? No, 20 years and 6 months from today, you'll have a gold record. I would have gone, screw that shit. I'm staying in school. You know what I mean? I just I would have said 20 years. Yep. Why on earth would it take 20 years to get a freaking gold record? Yep. Well, the book tells you what happened,
It sure does. And it is a story. It is a series of amazing stories. And I've seen the documentary. I think it was 2014 came out. We Are a Twisted Fucking Sister. And that tells a little bit more, even more of that struggle. It was a complete struggle for you guys, and you owned the circuit at that time. You were the only band out there. You were killing it.
Well, let's be fair at the circuit, so I can be really fair. There were 4 bands that there were thousands of bands on the circuit. All right. There were hundreds of bands on the tri-state circuit. People need to understand there was hundreds of clubs, hundreds of bands. Drinking age was 18, 15-year-old kids got in with fake proof, and the clubs were gigantic. But Twisted Sister, Zebra, the Good Rats, Rat Race Choir, if you were in Jersey, it was White Tiger and Crystal Ship. These were the bands that elevated themselves to the point where they could fill these rooms that held 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 people as a bar band, not as a concert attraction. All right. People don't understand that this was our learning curve. Okay. And so in order for these clubs to exist, you needed more than one band to be that popular. So there were a handful. The point is that we were weeded out and only the strongest survived. So to get to that level of being able to play 5 nights a week, 52 weeks a year, and to fill rooms that are by that time, the smallest room was 1,000, the biggest room was 5,000. And a club owner would take you in if he knew that you could put in. One thing you don't want to have is a 1,000-seat room and 100 people in the room. You definitely don't want to have a 5,000-seat room with 100 people in a room. Right. You need to have mega bands, and we were the biggest of the biggest. And Zebra got a record deal too. Zebra was popular, but yeah, it was a tiny little group of hundreds of bands at that time, who, by the way, if you ask them their stories, would tell similar stories of successes and failures, because we were all out there trying to kill ourselves. And all of us were victims of a stereotypical belief among the record labels in New York City. And remember, we're only playing 50 miles out of New York City. So let's keep the perspective here, right? Yep. Like it's like a donut. You got Manhattan in the middle, right? A 50-mile radius, and there's thousands of clubs. By the way, Talking Heads couldn't sell those rooms out. The Ramones couldn't sell those rooms out. The Dolls couldn't sell those rooms out. Blondie couldn't sell those rooms out. They may have been big in CBGBs in Manhattan,
right?
But the minute they crossed the river to Jersey, crickets. Yep. The minute they came out to Long Island, crickets. We were packing these rooms, but we weren't hip.
Right.
We weren't hip. We weren't part of the journalists, hip factor. Mm-hmm. So they paid us no mind. So what happened with Twisted Sister was people said, why don't you play Manhattan? Well, we weren't going to go into CBGBs. We weren't going to go into the Mud Club. We weren't going to go into the other little rooms that, the China Club, these other, because we were gigantic. So what did we do? We're the only band in history unsigned to sell out the Academy of Music or the Palladium. So while the Ramones are down the street putting in 200 people at CBGBs or Talking Heads, 250 people, we're putting 3,000 people into the Academy of Music. This is unheard of.
Oh, it's
completely unheard of.
Yeah, to watch and the footage from some of those shows and to watch that, it was rabid. I mean, it was when taking apart the clubs, when they were closing it. I mean, it's just
what the thing is, when you play 52 weeks a year, you get bored, and you got to keep coming up with like ideas because you don't forget you're playing within a 50-mile radius in New York. So in our brains, we're trying to think of things to do just to make our lives more entertaining for our lives, not just the fans. It's like, we would go through stretches where we'd be playing one club for 9 months at a time, every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
So we keep coming up with stuff. And amongst the crazy stunts was the destruction of the clubs. So once one club was destroyed and other club owners who needed to be destroyed by Italian lightning, if you get my drift, so they hired Twisted because they knew that our fans knew that under certain circumstances, the approval of the destruction of the room was allowed by the club owner. This is a bizarre story.
It really is
completely bizarre, but it happened at the 2001 disco. So the fans destroyed it. And then at Emmett's Inn in Jersey, the guy said, well, I think I want to redo the club. So just tell your fans we'll to destroy it and let them destroy the club. So the fans came in and they took the club apart. And then the Soap Factory disco wanted to become a rock club. So they said, tell your fans to just take the sheetrock and the John Travolta wallpaper and rip them off the wall. This was going on. I mean, this one club owner in Long Island said, yeah, I'm out of the building. So tell them to take everything. So we're on stage and we said, okay, guys, whatever, take home anything. So they went to the bathrooms, they tore the urinals off. But this has nothing to do with rock and roll necessarily.
I was going to say.
It has nothing to do with actually playing a song like a Judas Priest song or an original. So they tore the urinals, they took the payphones, and at the last minute, with 5 minutes left to go before 4:00 in the morning when the club was technically shut, they pulled the ceiling down, the air conditioning system crashed to the ground, the water pipes exploded, started to flood the room, and we had to run out with our gear before it was destroyed. So this was the world that we grew up in, which very few bands ever would experience, especially the approval of the destruction of a room by the club owner.
And the club owner's okay with all of it. That's what's great.
They're all right, whatever. We're out of here. We haven't paid our insurance. We're done. Knock yourself out. I'm sitting there going, does it get when it started happening like that? Club owners are going, yeah, we got a good reputation of destroying the room. I went, that wasn't exactly why we were rehearsing as much as we were.
I love it. It's great. Now you mentioned early on, you said you didn't want to be all about you and those stories and everything. You wanted a filter, which you got in Steve Farber. You tell these great stories, all of these stories, jamming with Kiss, the gun to your head, in the jewelry heist, chased by military police. is there a story that you wanted to tell, but it was filtered out? Is there one particular story that you had for the book, but it just didn't make it?
I mean, there were I don't know. There are a lot of stories. Oh God, I just told one the other day, and someone said, "Is that in the book?" And I went, "Oh God, I don't remember if it was." Now I'm just trying to remember the story. You did when you prefaced the book in the beginning, and you said it was a bizoir. It is a business book and a memoir, and the reason why it's a bizoir, which is a term I created, was because as I was telling these stories over the years, and people would say, "Why don't you write a book?" And I finally said, "I'm going to write a book." Then they went, "Well, what is it going to be about?" I go, "What do you think it's going to be about?" "Well, it's going to be about Twisted Sister." Well, like, what about Twisted? Well, I don't know. It's about my life. It's about Twisted. It's about me managing. What is it? So I said, "Well, it's going to be a memoir." I said, "Well, no, I think I'm going to write a business book." "No, I think I'm going to write a memoir." "No, I think I'm going to write a business book." And then I went, "Wait, why isn't it both? Why can't it be both?" I mean, what book about any business person is not a memoir and a business book? Because you become the kind of person you are through the history of your life, which is the memoir.
Mm-hmm.
So hence I coined the phrase bizwar. Yeah, I think I could tell you a funny story. So I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, if you know Manhattan at all. So I grew up on the Upper West Side, and I'm in my apartment. This is like 1968. I had my first gigantic amplifier, like a Marshall, like a big amp, and I just bought it. Or it was an Ampeg V4, but it was a stack, it was a stack, right? I think it was a V4 and Ampeg. So 2 4x12 cabinets in the head. And my mother was out, and it was, I think it was in like June of 68. I'm open the window of my apartment on the Upper West Side, and I had a Gibson SG, and I'm smoking so much dope that the room looked like Chernobyl, like definitely like Chernobyl. Like I'm so like it's just fogged up in the room, and I'm fucking waiting, and I'm windmilling, like, this is great, yeah. And then I hear the door bang, and I'm thinking, oh fuck, man, it's either the super or the cops, and I'm so stoned, and I stumble to the front door, and I open the door, and there's a woman standing there who I didn't recognize in my building, and she was, I have 20, 21, she goes, and she starts screaming at me, "You son of a bitch, you have a fucking idea how fucking loud I'm trying to work on my thesis for my PhD, and I can't fucking concentrate because of your fucking guitar." And I looked at her, I went, "What apartment are you in?" She goes, "What apartment? I live on 87 the Columbus Avenue." It was just 4 blocks. I was 4 blocks away.
Wow. I love it.
I went, "Oh my God.
Success."
Success. It's the greatest thing I've ever purchased in my life. Oh man, what a day.
It's great.
So that's awesome. There you go. I don't think that made the book. So
no. That's great. Let's talk about the demo. You recorded with Eddie Kramer, of course, Hall of Famer type. Just he's Eddie Kramer.
Eddie Kramer. Right. Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, Stones. Go ahead. He's Eddie Kramer.
It's just unbelievable. On that demo, I noticed you have Leader of the Pack on that demo.
Yeah.
And now you cite Leader of the Pack as, perhaps the biggest error of your career. And I would 1,000% agree with that as a Twisted fan. I lost the band at that point. I didn't understand that. It just didn't register with me as a long time Twisted fan. Do you think that having it on the demo might have hindered you getting signed?
No. First of all, we used to play in the bars. And if you want to talk about hardcore Twisted fans, the reason why we thought it was going to work is it was a huge hit in the bars. So Go figure. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird.
Go figure. We played in the bars. We did it at the Academy of Music. Deke came up on a motorcycle. We used to play it all the time. It was just a fun song to do.
Right.
So the mistake was, of course, that Come Out and Play it shouldn't have been on Come Out and Play, number one. And number two, probably Fire Still Burns should have been the lead single. And that would have changed everything. Okay.
Yeah.
But because it had worked, we didn't think it wasn't going to work. Right. So had we not done it, Had we never played it, it would have been never played. Had it just remained as a demo on an early package and came out as a package of our early stuff, they would just be accepted as a, demo track. Hey man, this is kind of funny that they made
Right.
this song. The fact that it was focused on and made a single was a mistake.
Yeah.
It should never have been. And if I could rewrite the history of the band, I would rewrite it then. However, if I could rewrite the history of the band, then the journey would have been a completely different journey.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so it never would have ended. We never would have gone through a dark period of 12 years. And we never would have come back in the manner that we came back. A lot of people don't understand this, but you will understand it because you are of a certain age. When grunge hit, it wiped out the hairband thing in about a day.
Yep.
So forget the fact that Leader of the Pack took us out a year earlier.
Right.
Smells Like Teen Spirit took out Warrant, Rat, Winger, White Lion, you name it.
The whole thing.
It was like the meteor that hit Mexico.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs, right? They all died.
Yeah.
Well, we were already dead.
Yeah.
So when the meteor hit and wiped out everybody, we were already wiped out. So we weren't victims of the wipeout,
Right.
which turned out to be to our advantage.
Yeah.
Because we went dark immediately. Okay. Twisted ends in at the beginning of 88. It's over. We're gone. Smells Like Teen Spirit is 90, I think.
Yeah.
Wipes out the dinosaur, whatever, 1991. Wipes
Right.
out. And then we're dormant and come back fully formed. Like almost like a bear that goes into hibernation.
Yeah.
We returned fully formed in 2003. And the myth of the band has had 13 years to gestate because we so cleanly disappeared. We didn't disappear with one ex-member calling it Twisted Sister and trudging along and
Right.
playing in little bars. And, how that works, right?
Yep.
'Cause we've seen a million bands like this. And I'm not going to
Yep.
tell bands that they don't have to do what you have to do. You do what you have to do. So
Right.
I'm just saying in our case,
Mhm.
we disappeared like a bear going to a cave and almost in its own weirdness emerge at the perfect time. 2001 disaster, 9/11, we come back to do the benefit. The word gets out in Europe, and in conjunction with the metal festivals exploding in popularity, we come back. And because we had been so successful in Europe in the beginning, we were given immediate headlining status. Now, Rat doesn't have that. Warrant doesn't have that. White Lion doesn't have that. Winger doesn't have that. Motley Crue really doesn't have that either. There's very
Right.
few places they can headline. Meanwhile, Twisted, in that 13-year period, bands like Dimmu Borgir, who death metal bands, black metal bands, they revere Twisted Sister. They start covering our music. All of a sudden, we become completely cool. And next thing you know, we're headlining death metal festivals with Slayer and all these bands where all those other American metal bands would never be seen.
Right.
Okay. But Motorhead, of course, is there in all those shows.
Mhm.
Motorhead, of course, with Lemmy, was a huge Twisted Sister fan.
Yep.
So it changed. We came back at a level that we could never have come back on had the band stumbled around that dormant period and collapsed because of the grunge takeover.
Yeah.
And I can't rewrite history, so it doesn't really matter. What happened.
Right.
But
Right.
Looking at it now, as much as it hurt and it sucked when it happened, it was probably the best thing that happened to the band.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not grouped in with those guys that died with the meteor. It was more of a, like you said, a hibernation, which was really to your credit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people don't. I'll explain this. There was actually 4 stages to the band's career. There was the bar era, that was 10 years. There was the video mega era, that was 6 years.
Mhm.
There was the dark period, that was 12 years. And then there was the mega festival / Twisted Christmas era, which lasted 14 years, which brought all the credibility back and made us super headliners around the world, including South America. So had that not happened, and we had just ended in 88, you and I wouldn't necessarily be talking right now.
Right.
The story wouldn't be anywhere near as compelling as it turned out to be. You know, people love stories where people come back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is a triumphant story. There's no doubt about it. It's so great to see. One thing that attracted me to the band early on, with the Under the Blade record, I got on really early. I love the name Pete Way on it. Now I noticed there is no. I'm a huge UFO fan. I noticed that there's Pete Way is not in the book at all. I was just wondering what that story was. How he becomes executive producer, co-producer on that record. What is the story behind Pete Way?
I do mention him when I did the thumbnail sketches of the albums. I did mention that Pete Way was the producer of the album, the thumbnail. So it's not like
at the end.
But you know, when I look at these mini pieces, so the England thing happened so quickly. You know, first it was a journalist, and then it was another journalist, and then it was Secret Records, and then it was Pete Way, and then Lemmy. And Pete Way existed in a slot, you know, and Pete, God rest his soul, you know, didn't really produce the record, you know, but people don't even understand what the word producer means in the music business. You know, in movies, a producer's a fundraiser and a director directs the movie, right?
Right.
But in rock and roll, producer is this kind of nebulous thing. Like a producer can be George Martin, that knows every knob and is a songwriter and plays 20 instruments and bonds with a band and becomes like the fifth or sixth piece of the band. That can be that way. And a producer can be, hey man, wow, I like the way it sounds, man. Yeah, play that solo again, man. Yeah, okay, good. Record it like that. You know, that's what a producer can be.
Right.
And a producer can be a vibe guy. Like Rick Rubin, I understand, is like a vibe guy. He's not necessarily a hands-on engineer. Right. He's a vibe guy. Like he'll sit in a room and go, I like that, I don't like that, take this, like a book editor kind of thing. Right. So you can do that, not to disparage him, but just saying it can be a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Pete Way was like a comic relief, you know, because he was a big drinker. We were not. Right. So he showed up. He was like Dudley Moore, you know. He was like that kind of like Dudley Moore British. Oh, Jai, how are you? You know? And like we're like all these guys from New York, and we're not drinking, so we don't go to the pub with him because we're not drinking. You know, he's always in the pub. So when he's in the pub, we're trying to record. And you know, I'm sorry, Pete, but your schedule and our schedule may not be dovetailed. So why don't you go to the pub, do what you got, and then show up when you want to show up. And that was Pete.
Right.
But everyone loved Pete. Everybody loved Pete. I mean, you know, he was just one of those guys. So in a way, he set an atmosphere that was fun. So there you go.
Yeah.
You know,
it worked. It worked.
And he brought down Fast Eddie, who's on the album, you know. Now, Eddie Clark shows up with two guitar cases. Maybe this isn't the one guitar case has his Les Paul, and the other guitar case has a bottles of Jack Daniels. You know, like he opens up the first case, pulls it out, pulls to the second case. I go, what's that? He goes, oh yeah, that's my Jack. I went, okay. Well, he goes, no, you're gonna drink with me, JJ. I went, no, I'm not gonna drink you. Oh yes, you are. If you want me on this day, it's good. So oh fuck me. So I mean, I fucking hate. I hate the taste of alcohol. I just never, that's why I don't drink. Nothing to do with the religious, or I don't understand why people drink this shit. I just don't. And I got friends who love whiskey, love bourbon, will sit there and go 50-year-old scotch, you know, whatever. I appreciate it. I'm not that guy. He's not that guy. Mendoza's not that guy. To us, it's just fucking cough medicine, and it tastes like crap.
Right.
So, but here's Fast Eddie. Not only is he insisting I drink with him, he's insisting that we record the album sitting in the middle of haystacks, which are photographed in the book. We're in the middle of haystacks. He's in a farm, and he's insisting on being in the haystacks with the headphones, with the Marshall stacks. Do you know how loud you have to be in the headphones if you've got Marshall stacks in your haystacks?
Right.
Jumping up and down. So I figured, you know, I got to be a little buzzed in order to handle this, because this is off the charts, fucking crazy. And so I think it's the only time in my life I ever drank Jack. with him that night, because when in Rome, right? Like I said, it wasn't a religious thing. It's not because I was in AA. I had no concern about becoming an alcoholic.
Right.
Excuse me. I just said to myself, I'm going to bond with my brother here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I bonded with him, and that's why we did it. But anyway, Pete was that. And now, by the way, Malcolm Dome just died today.
No way.
British journalist Malcolm Dome, who on our new album, which is coming out on the 17th of November, which is just a double vinyl album of greatest hits live in studio. Malcolm's got the last quote. Malcolm has written more liner notes for Twisted Sister than any other journalist. And if you look at the journalists from Gary Bushell, Dante Benuto, Howard Johnson, Jeff Barton, these are the guys that championed Twisted Sister. Malcolm was the most. And I had just emailed him last week saying I'm going to be in London on November 15 and 16. Let's have lunch. And this morning I wake up and saw that he just died. And Malcolm used to come to New York. When I used to train for the marathon, we used to run the reservoir in Central Park. What a sweetheart. He's the guy that called me when Pete Wade died. First of all, he called me, tell me Pete Wade had prostate cancer. Then he got Pete to call me. And I spoke to Pete just before he died. And now Malcolm has died. So with me today is a heavy heart because of Malcolm's death, because he was such a close friend of the band and such an important journalist in heavy metal.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Metal Hammer, all the bands, Motorhead, all the bands that you love.
Yep.
Malcolm Dome's name comes up all the time.
Yeah. He died. I know the name well. Being a writer, somebody I greatly admire. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's horrible.
So the rule for today is dedicated to the memory of Malcolm Dome.
Absolutely. I wanted to mention the Good Rats in here with Joey Franco, because I know you had Joey in the band. And I was a Good Rats fan, taking it to Detroit and all that. Just fantastic. They have a song, "Don't Hate the Ones Who Bring You Rock and Roll."
They wrote for us, actually.
Okay, Twisted Brothers, Twisted Sisters. And
Twisted Mothers, Twisted Brothers, Twisted Sisters. Don't hate the ones that bring you rock and roll. Yeah.
That was an homage to you guys.
Yes, it was. Pepe wrote it for us.
Man,
he never recorded it. And Dee didn't understand the song until years later. And he told me, he said, God, Pepe said, Dee, I wrote the song for you guys. And we never recorded the song.
Oh, man. Well, there's time. Right.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's a reason to go back in the studio.
Yeah, there you go. No doubt. That would be great. And I want to be respectful of your time. Are you good?
I'm good right now. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The cover for Stay Hungry, I know that was a big bump in the road for you guys. With just having Dee, the plan was to have you guys around the table and have the whole band there. How did you're managing the band? You're
not then I wasn't.
Oh, okay. How does that a group decision to keep that image?
Okay. Let's look at some things. Let's say you have no personal connection to anything. You're just a consumer. Mm-hmm. You pick up an AC/DC album. All you see is Angus on the cover on many AC/DC records. Let's say you pick up a Fleetwood Mac album, biggest selling record, one of the biggest in history, Rumors. Who's on the cover? Mick Fleetwood and Stevie Nicks. Where's John McVie? Where's Chris? Where's the rest of them?
Right.
They're not there. Okay. You look at Live at Hammersmith, the Twisted Sister. I'm not in the picture, and I picked that picture. I'm on it, but I'm so faded out. I'm on the drum platform facing backwards to the drummer. You see Eddie and Mark and Dee. If you're not looking carefully, where's JJ? I picked that cover because it was the dramatic cover. It looked good. And there's a quote in my book from Ahmet Ertegun, and it says, success is easier if you don't mind who gets the credit.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to sublimate your ego for the greater good. Marketing, for example. So that's an example of what that is.
And that is a great example of the humility I'm talking about. It's just you did things for what you thought was right, not for your ego, not to stroke your ego.
Now what we did was, when we did Still Hungry, the cover of Still Hungry is the way the cover was originally designed.
Right, which was really cool. I saw that and I was like, that's just great to have both.
Right.
Because the Stay
Yes.
Hungry cover is
It's
great.
an iconic. It's an iconic cover.
Of course it is. And
By the way,
the-
bands go through excruciating pains with covers, and about a month later, nobody remembers what was on the damn cover. I mean, you go through so much shit, so much approval, so much sturm and drang, angst, and then you never look at it again.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
another issue with covers, that people just don't even look at them once you go through all this fighting. But, you try to be magnanimous. And for the longest time, it was always the five, the five, the five. And look, D ran with it. Could he have done a better job? Sure. He could have said, I'll make sure that all five of us always get tons of press. We went through a very, very, very long, lengthy, crazy process. But I don't think that the long range image of Twisted Sister, or the long range knowledge of these songs, are what people remember. They don't even remember the image so much. In fact, if you take a 10-year-old kid and you ask them who Twisted Sister is, chances are they'll say no. But if you go, we're not gonna take it, the kid's gonna sing the song.
Yep.
So we benefit. What makes Twisted Sister so damn unique above just about every single metal band for sure, and when it comes to Kiss and Priest and AC/DC, we're talking about, great legendary bands.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can take a 10-year-old kid and go, you shook me all night long, and the kid's going to finish the sentence.
No,
I don't know
so.
if you're going to go, I want to rock and roll all night and party every day, if a 10-year-old kid's going to finish that sentence. But when you go, we're not going to take it, the kid's going to sing the song.
Yeah.
So that means that Twisted Sister has done something that is extraordinary, which is created a transcendent anthem that is used around the world. I mean, in the last week, a fan from Honduras sent me a video of a guy running for the presidency of Honduras. Whether you like him, you don't like him, it's not the point of this example. The point of the example is they're using "We're Not Going to Take It" in Spanish. Okay. As his theme song. Now, whether he pays the rights for it, that's another issue. But I'm just trying to say this is what it means. The guy running for president of Spain last week, same thing in Spain. When Brexit was happening in England, my daughter, who's British, sent me a clip. People were singing "We're Not Going to Brexit" on the steps of the parliament. So what this means is that the consciousness of the song, and ergo the legend of Twisted Sister, transcends anything out there, and it's really spectacular. And D wrote them, and we talk about it all the time. He wrote these songs. I Want to Rock and We're Not Going to Take It, the two most licensed songs in the history of heavy metal. And if he didn't write them, my daughter probably wouldn't go to college. You know what I mean? It's like, he wrote these songs, and these songs are just monster songs that continue to generate huge money over the years.
Yeah.
You can't take it away from us.
Yeah.
So you could hate Twisted Sister all you want, and you still ain't going to change the fact that that song is one of the most famous songs in the world. Too bad if you hate the band. I don't really care. You can hate me. And by the way, everybody hates everybody. My wife doesn't like the Beatles. Like, she can't stand them. I play them in the house. Yeah. And I write a Beatle column. Go figure. She just hates them. Like, she's like, oh God, like, she doesn't hate it. She's so sick of listening to them. Yeah. She just goes, the minute anybody, and everyone knows I write a Beatle column, the minute someone starts asking me questions, her eyes roll in the back of her head. Like, you really have to fucking talk about this. The only band she's more sick of hearing about is Twisted. So she loved the fact I wrote the book. So if we're at a dinner party and someone says, "So JJ," and she goes, "Listen, he wrote a book, buy the fucking book. Here's his email him a question. And can we talk about anything else except this goddamn band?" People forget what it's like. Jim, Marshall amplifiers, Marshall, right? Jim Marshall was married 7 times. And I say to Jim, "Why are you married 7 times?" He goes, "Because my wives get sick of fucking hearing the story about Marshall amps. I'm asked that story every goddamn day of my life." Some guy goes, "No, Jim, how did it start?" And the wife goes, "I'm out of here. I'm out of here." Can you imagine Paul McCartney or Ringo? Like,
this is true.
Like, you have to temper it, because you say to yourself, well, if that made you famous, why should you be sick of talking to that? And on one side of it, that is true. On one side of it, if that's what made you famous and that's what people want to know about, unless you're a prick, you don't want to be rude.
Right. Right.
So how do you handle that? So like, for example, this is interviews for my book, right? So we talk about it all the time, no problem. But on days when I'm not doing interviews, do I really want to
Right. And that's
talk about it? No.
a little bit of a price of fame for sure.
Yeah. You have to kind of, that's why I like being anonymous. I really just don't want people.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, this is a funny story. So where are you located?
I'm in Chicago.
Chicago. So
yeah.
So we played a club called the Fore and Aft, which is like a boating term, fore and aft, like a boating term, the fore, the front.
Yeah.
So we played a club called the Fore and Aft, and it was a little bar in White Plains, and it was, in fact, Ace used to go there frequently. Like Ace lived near there.
Okay.
And the famous story of Ace's first car accident, where he went down Route 22 the wrong way and hit 9 cars, that was after seeing us.
Really?
One Tuesday at the Fore and Aft.
Wow.
He got plastered. They threw him out of the room because he was so drunk, he was being rude and obnoxious or something. I mean, he was known in the area, and it was just like Ace is here, and he got in his car or whatever. Right. And by the way, I'm a big fan of his. So in no way am I saying that except for just the perspective of what this room was. And okay, so it was a tiny room. And one night, some guy goes, "Hey, JJ, you're not loud." Like the guy screaming, "We're not loud enough," which is impossible. The stage was 5 feet high. The marshals are in your head. The clubs was tiny. The sound pressure levels must have been just obscene. But invariably, some idiot's drunk and on lewds, and he's going, "You fucking guys suck," or "You fucking guys aren't loud enough." And one night, this idiot starts in with me. What we normally did was we would call the guy on stage. Now, when the guy would come up on stage, invariably he'd be 5'10" or less, and me, D, and Mark would walk up to him in our 6-inch heels, and now we're like 6'8", and we're standing on top of him. The guy would go, "I'm kidding, man." Go. "What's your problem?" "I love your band. I love your band." So this guy says, "Hey, man, you're not fucking loud enough." And I said, "How the fuck? I'm playing through 3 marshals in a tiny little room." So I take his head and I shove it in the speaker column, and I hit like an E note, not loud enough. So I told the road crew to get duct tape, and they duct taped the guy to the marshals. Like Jesus Christ, They tape him like this, and the guy's taped to the amplifier, and we're playing the set, and I keep watching him, waiting for him to go, "Let me go," and he's like, "This is like the greatest experience. This is the greatest experience of his life." And he's giving me the thumbs up. That set's over. They cut him down, and he goes on his way. And for years, I'm going, "Man, I wonder if that guy is alive. Like, what happened to that guy?"
He can't hear anymore.
So, one day I'm walking through Grand Central Station in New York, and someone recognized me. And he yells out across the floor, "JJ Fred! Hey, what the fuck is this, the man?" I walk up to him and go, he goes, "Hey, man, I just got one thing to tell you. Remember that night at the Fore and Aft with that guy? You taped him to those amplifiers?" I go, "Yeah, was that you?" He goes, "No, man, that was my best friend." And I said, "Is he alive?" He goes, "Are you kidding me? He still tells people that was the greatest night of his life."
I love it.
And I said, "Is he married with kids?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And that's still the best night of his life."
Yeah.
So she's telling him to go to a therapist, I think,
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, those are priceless. It's a beautiful thing to be involved with that, and issue something like that. It's special, man.
Yeah.
One more for you. You've done so much. You've pleased millions of people with your art. You're a speaker. There's so many things you do, and so many things you have done in your past. Is there anything, is there a top on your bucket list? What's left for you? Is there something that you've always wanted to do that you haven't done?
Well, I think I'd love to do 5 minutes of stand-up and not get booed off the stage. So that may be,
I think that's possible, man.
That may be, I'm trying to work up material, do like I have I have a line that is one of the greatest lines I've ever written, which is like, "The Rolling Stones fans don't clap because they're so old they're afraid the lights will go on in the arena. That's like my favorite. That's like one of my favorite lines. I wrote that line. That's great. But I'd love to do 5 minutes of stand up and not get booed off the stage. I think it'd be fun to do. But for the most part, I mean, I write for several magazines. I have the podcast, the JJ French Connection, JayJayFrench, which is on every Tuesday. I have new guests. In fact, this week I interview the producers of the Grateful Dead documentary. Because I was a deadhead. And so, I talk about that, although people don't expect a heavy metal guy to be a deadhead. I said, I was a deadhead. Jerry Garcia gave me a tab of acid. The Phil Maurice, it doesn't get much more fucking official than that as a Grateful Dead. I'm sorry. And so for all the concerts you went to, I saw Pigpen 27 times, motherfucker. Okay. So like, don't talk to me about credibility, because I saw them in 68 to 72 when you guys weren't even born. In fact, the guys who produced the documentary were not born yet at the time. Wow. I saw the Dead, but anyway, the drummer, Bill Kreutzmann's son, is one of the producers. We've become very, very good friends. Cool. He's a great guy. He's actually a funny guy. In fact, he saw the Twisted documentary, in which I said I saw the Dead 26 times on acid. On the 27th time, I went straight and was the worst band I ever heard in my life. That was my joke in the documentary. And I got an email from a guy. He said, "Hey man, just saw your documentary. I heard what you said about the Dead." That's all he wrote. Signed Justin Kreutzmann. I was like,
really?
I wrote, "You wouldn't be related to the drummer, would you?" He goes, "It's my dad." And I went, "I'm sorry." He goes, "No, man, that was the funniest shit I ever heard in my life." I was like, anyway, we've become really good friends. We just went back and forth yesterday because the interview I did. It's a great documentary. If you're a deadhead, by the way.
Yeah.
Awesome documentary. And
awesome.
So I interviewed them on my podcast. So I got that. I got the book going out as soon as I can do my speaking engagements again, when the COVID is finally out and people are starting to have people over. I started doing it live last month. I've done a couple of in-person ones for corporations, and they're for corporations. They're not music industry people. I get hired by banking groups, businessmen, because it's a universal, what I teach, which is the Twisted method of reinvention, which is what the book is about. It's taking the letters of Twisted, TWISTED, tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, discipline. I turned it into a format and a formula for people to follow for success. So.
Yeah, and that was one of the beautiful things about the book. It's not specifically for the musician or the band. It is
or heavy metal or rock and roll or R&B, pop, you name it.
Yep, you can apply those values and that system to any level of success in any business.
And personal life too, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And more people are shocked. They said to me, I've had people say to me, "Man, you're like the Tony Robbins of metal," or something like that. And I went, "I'll take that as a compliment."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it is a book for success in any form of life, no doubt. And it's a great read. It's a fun read. It is beautifully written, like I said, and it is an absolute joy. And it's been great, JJ. I can't thank you enough. Dream come true. To a huge honor for me. You've been a
great host. And you've asked me some good questions. And I got a chance to tell some stories I haven't told before. So thank you for doing that. And you're wearing the right shirt. To the memory of Malcolm Dome today, who passed away, great British journalist whose liner notes are on our album that's coming out November 17th, called Tear It Loose, which is a double vinyl. It's for vinyl people who like to collect vinyl.
Yeah,
it's a live, it's best of live, best of studio, and two double record. Thank you for supporting that. The book is available on Amazon. Mm-hmm. As everything is available on Amazon.
Yeah.
Future wife may be available on Amazon.
That's just true.
Yeah. They're gonna wind up selling everything, So it's available on Amazon and some bookstores. I think maybe some signed copies left at Barnes and Noble on Fifth Avenue in New York City, or Book Soup in Los Angeles.
Beautiful.
I'm not sure if there are, but anyway, have a good holiday, good a great Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and every other descriptive holiday you could possibly mention, not to mention Thanksgiving, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And thank you. And Chicago, great city, wonderful city, great restaurants, great guitar store, Chicago Music Exchange.
Yes.
Love it. Some of the craziest restaurants I've ever eaten in are in Chicago, and the city, it's aesthetically, and I'm from New York, but I think the city of Chicago is absolutely stunning as a city.
That's great to hear, man. And you met Steve there, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yep, that was pretty great.
Yeah, at the very first SobCon convention, which is a social media event. That's where I met Steve.
Yeah, pretty great, man. You gonna be back here soon? You gonna do any kind of book tour, maybe?
No, I'm doing a book tour this weekend, but I'm not going to be. When is this going to be airing, or
Uh,
this interview?
Probably tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So
Yep.
on Friday, November 5th, I will be in New Bedford, Massachusetts,
Okay.
doing a book signing.
Okay.
And on Saturday, the 7th, or rather the 6th, I will be in New York at Generation Records in New York City. And on Sunday, the 7th, I will be in Long Island at Looney Tunes doing a signing. So those are my current 3 locations for doing signings.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see you here, shake your hand, give you a hug, man.
Right.
That would be great. And I appreciate you, sir.
Right,
And it's been great. And we'll talk.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, JJ.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.